Welcome to the ParentNet podcast by Focus on the Family Singapore. In each episode, we'll be speaking with everyday parents and practitioners as they share with us gems from their parenthood journey. Keep tuning in to learn with us as we figure it out together.
Hello and welcome to the ParentNet podcast. My name is EJ and I'm your host for this episode. In each episode of the ParentNet podcast, we will be tackling questions that parents are asking about family life, parenting, marriage, work life, and more. We will be speaking with everyday parents and practitioners as they share with us their experience and practical ideas. We hope that you will keep tuning in to learn with us and to grow personally in your journey as parents. The importance and influence of fathers in their families has seen a steady decline since the Industrial Revolution and is now reaching its peak, especially in the West. In Singapore, fewer men are choosing to get married compared to past generations, and even fewer are choosing to become fathers. Fatherhood is often perceived through a negative lens, such as the loss of freedom, higher expenses arising from parenting responsibilities, and a hindrance to one's achievement of career ambitions and dreams. Men who do choose to become fathers face challenges in the workplace, such as the unspoken pressure on new dads to return to work quickly, and fears of how their absence at work will be perceived by their bosses and colleagues, given the varied views on the essential role a father plays in caring for a newborn. Every now and then, we stumble upon a rare gem of a man who is thriving both in his career and in his roles as father and husband back home. How do some men do it all? That's a big question that I always wonder myself as well as a father, and where their work and home responsibilities complement and work in tandem with each other without a need to sacrifice either. So I'm very privileged on this episode of the ParentNet podcast. Joining me is Jimmy Sia. He's a father, he's a husband, very intentional one, and today we're going to hear a lot of thoughts from him on this topic of fathering. What motivates him to be an intentional, present father to his young children, and yet still find time to thrive in his career. So, Jimmy, welcome to our ParentNet podcast. So glad to have you today.
Thanks, EJ. Thanks for having me on this podcast. So, hi everyone, I'm Jimmy. I'm a tech professional in my own career, but I think more importantly, I'm a father to 3 wonderful children. So, my eldest, Jacob, he's 8 years old this year. My second son, Christopher, is 7. And obviously, my little princess, Andrea, is 3 this year. Right? Obviously, the little darling of the family. But more importantly, I'm married to a very wonderful and beautiful wife, Christine. So I've been married for 9 years now. So it's been a very good time raising children with her and, really enjoyed that, being a father.
Wow, Jimmy, as you were sharing, I can see the glow on your face and can see that your family is really like the pride of your life.
It's definitely my pride.
As we're going to talk about fathering today and zooming in on your 3 children, maybe let's kick off and share with us, what do you enjoy doing with your children, your 3 wonderful kids?
I do a lot of fun stuff with them, right? Being the very typical Singaporean, a lot of it is you think of academics and play with them. But in our house, we focus a lot on play first. And I think it's important to play. And playing is not just about playing toys or playing Pokemon all the time, but really going out to nature. We like to hike as a family. We do picnics. We like to travel. We like to just tease each other. And I think that's what I really like, the kind of bonds that we build in every activities that we do. One thing that we also like to do is read together. And we like to share knowledge with each other. So if my wife would read about something or learn about something, she'll just tell the children and myself, hey, I read about something today. And this is quite interesting. So I think that knowledge builds a bit of a bond within the family itself.
I really like what Jimmy you shared about such intentional efforts to engage your children, especially through play, physical, fun and play, which is really very rare in the times where the world is getting so high-tech and we are so hyper-connected. So I'd like to ask you this question, as you're so involved in play and engagement, could you share with us your approach to parenting and what role you see yourself playing as a father?
I thought about this quite a long time, like what am I as a father? One thing that stood out to me was the role of a player coach. I play a lot of sports, so when I was young, I used to play a lot of rugby. I think I watched a lot of football as well. And I like the idea of a coach. You don't play the game, right? As a coach, you don't go and play the football match, but you actually have the right strategies and look at the right talents to put on the game. Who plays a defender, who plays a striker. So I see myself as a player coach. And a lot of it came from my corporate background as well. in management, you would manage up and manage down. So you will need to know how to look at the broader strategy and also play and understand what your team members are doing as well. So that is where I see myself, obviously, first and foremost as a player coach, where I guide my children. I guide them in realities of life a little bit. I don't actually guide them in the way they should look at things, but understand things a little bit better. But also get involved in going through difficult situations with them, understanding difficult situations there, or working through difficult times, or even having fun. I think that's a play that we should really think about. So I really see my role very much like a player coach at the moment.
Very dynamic, and most importantly, like a coach. I personally like sports, so soccer, basketball, I can really relate to what you're sharing about as a coach. And I think one of the key principles of being a coach is also you understand the profile, the personality, the behavioral patterns of each unique player, and translate it in the same way. You know what makes every one of your child ticks.
Exactly.
What worked for child A may not work for child B. You have to try a different approach as well, right?
Exactly. I think there's a bit of homework to be done. You need to know your children really well first, right? And to know them well is to really interact with them a lot more.
We cannot run away from spending time.
Yes.
And I think time is a precious commodity in such an age where, despite the busyness, despite the hectic schedule, the bustlings of life, we have to fork out time to invest in that relationship with our children, to know them better so that we can help them and grow, nurturing them in this journey. Now, you and your wife both are very intentional in parenting your children. And so I'd like to seek your opinion. What is your view on the importance of specifically a father's presence in a young children's life as compared to a mom? Disclaimer, we're not saying that a mom is bad or in any way, but what's so unique about the father's role and presence? And maybe you could also add on to share with us what events or people has shaped your beliefs that you hold to in terms of fathering.
Obviously, I think both of my wife and I kind of play very different roles. I think in the family, my wife is obviously the one more nurturing. I'm the rougher person, so I like to have rough play with my kids. I think that's where a father comes. I recently read about the power of play with children, roughing it up with them as a father is important, because that's where they learn social norms. They learn about what a father do. They learn also how to empathize and show some emotions with their father. And it makes a kid happier, right? So I think that's where a father role should be importantly. Obviously, my wife and I bring very different strengths and very different things to the table. But being a father, I think that roughing with the boys, maybe not so much my princess, right? More of the boys, they really learn, okay, this is how I should behave. This is how, as a man, what should I be looking and thinking about? So I think that's really important for a father's role in my family. What impacts me or what guides my thinking is I read this book that is quite influential in how it shapes my thinking. It's called The Power of Being Seen. It's by Dr. Dan Siegel. So there's 4 S that he describes in the book. One is safe, one is soothe, one is secure, the 4th one, seen. I think that's where father roles play, right? We need to give our kids the sense of safety, right? They know that in danger, there's someone to turn to or who they can reach out to. Seen, the father would need to come in to understand and show empathy. Okay, I know you're scared of this moment. I understand you. And that's what I want to be shown to my kids, that I'm there, I know what's going on. And then only when they feel secure, they will feel that, okay, this is what a family environment should be. And I think that's where it really guides my thinking as a father. And the other important thing is obviously my faith as well. I always crack a joke with my friends. If I was meant to raise 3 kids, I better make sure that they turn out to be good people in society, create some impact out there. And because of my relationship of how I grew up, my father was a bit trying. I always believe that it's important to have good stewardship of our children, and it's very intentional. I was just thinking about it. Nobody teach you how to be a father, or nobody teach you how to be a family member. And that is really intentional. So all of this kind of guide what kind of father I want to be.
Wow, Jimmy, I think there's a lot of wisdom as you've just shared. Even in the last part where you mentioned about how in your own journey growing up, you probably didn't have the very best example in the way your father raised you, but that has not stopped you from wanting to become a very intentional dad to your kids today. That, I feel, takes a lot of awareness, maturity, intentionality on your part to want to walk what is the healthier, the better path for your children. So even earlier when we talk about being intentional parents to our children, it has to start with ourselves.
Yes.
Being aware of how we were parented, and if they were good ways, we pass it on forward. If they were deemed as probably not healthy, not so positive, well, we learn to correct and make course corrections along the way. So I really love what you've mentioned, and especially the part you talked about a dad having to provide that safe harbor for your children, safety, security, And we're probably seeing more and more of that nowadays with the fathers compared to a more traditional approach right now. So I think that is really heartening. As you've been doing all this, being really intentional and being that safe harbor to your children, your faith has directed you. What has been the outcome of this approach of parenting you have taken, as you see your kids grow up? How do you see them affecting your kids' life in the short and long term?
I don't think I yield any results now because it's still too early, they're still young. But I think more importantly is I want to build them for their life. And I was quite lucky that I have a lot of mentors that came into my life, male mentors who have been quite established in their careers and good fathers that I learned from. And something that stood by me is what I hope to see in my kids is I cannot guide their path of what they want to be eventually, but I can equip them with the skills. And a lot of this intentional is to equip them the skills today so that when they're older, they're adults, when they're made to confront difficult situations or life choices, they have the skills to be able to do that. So I cannot protect them from danger. I cannot protect them from bad stuff as they grow older. But as long as they have the skills, they're able to deal with it properly. So I think that's the outcome that I want to see, hopefully.
It is so true, right? I mean, we cannot guide our children forever. They have to fend for themselves in the world. But what Jimmy rightly pointed out is that what we're doing now, what all of us, all the fathers, and even parents that we're doing right now is setting a good foundation. Hopefully this foundation provides like a good compass for them as they move along in life. And anytime they feel unsure, uncertain, they look back at what their parents taught them. And in this case for you, what as a father you've taught your children as well. Thank you so much for sharing. And I hope our audiences on the ParentNet podcast, you're picking up all these wonderful nuggets of wisdom too. Now, one of the greatest demands on parents, especially dads, is to earn money and provide for the family materially, really putting food on the table. Many fathers do desire to be more involved and present in their children's lives, but find it difficult to carve out the time and the energy to do so. I had this candid joke with my wife before, saying that when I reach home and at the end of the day, fetching my kid home, my energy is at the lowest of the lowest level, but his energy is at the highest, and it's such a great disparity, right? That's the great difficulty and the struggles as dads, as parents. And interestingly, in a recent fatherhood involvement survey that Focus on the Family Singapore conducted, respondents said that they hope that their fathers have been more involved in their emotional development and shared activities. So Jimmy, share some insights with us. Could you share some maybe practical tips to all the fathers who are tuning in out there, how we could all integrate in our role as a provider, as a father, in a manner which could help us to, some people say balance, some people say juggle, but in all to better thrive on the work front and at home too.
Sure. I totally empathize with that, right? Like, I'm also very tired on the weekends, and sometimes you rather sleep in, but that the kids' morning, you're either going for some enrichment or they're just too active. And coming from a very corporate background, I always believe in mechanisms. And it's not easy. So what I'll do is two things. One is I'll make sure that every single moment in the day that I can be able to engage my kids, I maximize the time with them. So it could be just 15-30 minutes, and before they need to go to bed, I make sure that I'm there talking to them or doing something with them. It's not going to take me 2 hours, 3 hours. That's fine. I think, this is reality of life living as a working parent in Singapore. The second thing that my wife and I have very intentionally started is we wanted to spend a lot more time understanding our children. So what we have started on Sundays, just before the start of the week, is to have family conferences. So like every company, you have meetings, right? Like organization, and we call it culture. So I was just thinking one day to my wife, hey, companies have cultures. What does it take to build family culture? And company culture are held together by accountability, right? You have to align to the company. So I wanted to start something like that in my family. What is my family culture and what we're going to do as a family together? So the family conference takes us only 30 minutes on a Sunday. We talk about our plans for the week. We ask our children what are they grateful for the week. And, we tell them this is what daddy and mommy is looking out for upcoming, what we're excited about. So while it takes 30 minutes, it's very intentional to know what they think and what they feel, so that throughout the week, even though I've just 15-30 minutes with them, I know what's going on and what should we be anticipating. It's a lot of planning up front, not easy, and not easy to make sure you follow through the rituals, but we do our best as much as we can as parents.
Wow, I like this idea of having a family conference time. It sounds like a little bit of a weekly check-in with everyone. I like your parallel that you mentioned, like since we are doing this in the workplace, we have team meetings, we have town halls, and then to check in with everybody. How about something similar on the home front as well? And as you do that, Jimmy, have you found that it has brought about any benefits to the whole family too?
Definitely. So in fact, my wife just texted me yesterday, because we just had our family conference on Sunday, that I like this because we understand our children a little bit more. And Sunday was quite an important time because my eldest, Jacob, he just took part in his first kind of national jiu-jitsu competition. That conference was a time to break down, what he went through, what he really felt. And even though he didn't win first, but, we could use that moment to talk about it rather than talk about it immediately after the competition. So I think these kind of moments help us a lot to really engage our children much better.
To all the dads that are listening out there, there's one practical thing you can bring home and you can try to make some nudges to your schedule is to set in some kind of these family conferences, check-ins. I think checking in with our children is important. As I hear what Jimmy shared, that checking in also indirectly or directly helps the children to feel that they're very connected with their parents, that they are seen, that they're heard, that they are valued as kids in the family, as well as beyond the academics and the many things that the world may think that is important to the children.
And I might just add, the family conference gives the children the chance to veto any plans that they don't like for the week. So at least we want them to be involved in planning out the week together.
That's right. I mean, then that gives them a sense of ownership.
Exactly.
And they feel that their opinions are valued as well, right? It's not just a one-way street talking, the mom and dad talking and the kids are listening, but they have their views that they can share, and again, that they're heard and they're valued too. Again, on really practical things, I know all these sounds really good, but heard many stories of many other dads out there who try their very best. We try our very best to juggle both the work front and the home front. Were there times for yourselves, or you have heard of stories of your good friends where you had to make certain level of sacrifices, just so that things at home don't even fall apart? Because I think the worst is when things at home fall apart and you seemingly think that you're still doing well in the workplace, but things at home are crumbling as well.
I've not personally seen anything fall apart. I think I'm quite grateful and blessed that I have a support system around helping my family up. But I do have moments where I'm not doing well at work and I bring my mental struggles home as well. My anger, my angst, my bitterness. Sometimes, work has so much challenge and you kind of take it out at the children sometimes, or even your own wife, right? You cannot articulate it or cannot communicate it properly. So those are moments where I am aware, but you are just stuck in that moment. I'm very mindful of that. I try my best. We are all not saints at home sometimes and we lose our temper easily. And that's where my wife is my accountability partner. She will tell me, hey, that's not cool, man.
It's so important you talked about having that accountability community, because we are not perfect. And there are days that things just don't fall in place and we lose it emotionally, easily. We scream, we shout, but we learn to apologize and we try to make it back with the kids. And I think that takes a lot of humility, maturity, as well as allowing people around us to speak into our lives. That's why I think in terms of parenting, especially in the role of fathering, it is important to have accountability communities around us. Sure. Definitely our spouse and also other dad friends around us. I understand that you created a GPT app for fathers. That's something interesting, and I would really like to hear more from you what it is all about, how this thing works, and what motivates you to even start something like that.
Because I come from a very technology background, I've been very intrigued by AI for a long time. And when OpenAI started this whole GPT shop, I decided, hey, they can create GPT for so many fun stuff. Why not create something that can teach people something? And I remember once I went for one of these father's event and this guy said, hey, my daughter came home from school. And I just asked her, how's her day today? She got angry with me. She didn't want to talk. And one of the trainers said that, yes, because your daughter probably had a long day, and maybe that's not the question that she really wants to answer now. What is she going to answer? It's a bad day, I'm not going to do anything. And a lot of things came out is, how do we bond with our children is asking them questions to bond with them. And it's of no fault of this father asking the daughter, how's your day? So that's what the trainer said, that you could ask, what was something that excited you today? Or what made you sad today? Or which friend you like to hang out with today? So I wanted to help fellow fathers to see whether they can equip their skill just to have little conversations, just to bond with their kids. It's not something major, like you don't have to do something big for an hour, 2 hours, but just asking the right questions every day and even telling stories. So like my kids enjoy bedtime stories. And funny enough, the bedtime stories they enjoy are me reading a movie synopsis on Wikipedia. So I thought about it, why not use those movie synopsis and change it to funny stories to tell the kids before they sleep? Same thing, even though it's just 5 minutes storytelling, it helps the father to bond with the children. And so I think it's very intentional, what I call them mechanisms daily, so that while you don't have a full hour, 2 hours, 3 hours to spend with your kids, it's all these little 5 minutes or asking the right questions to them helps to bond as well. That was the purpose of the GPT, to just give them little nuggets of things to ask or stories to tell. And that's what I want to help fellow fathers.
These are really good tips and handles because it just enables and kickstarts the conversation. And don't belittle such little handles, because once you kickstart and you get the right inroad, it's like having a key that opens the door and that furthers other conversations that our children might want to have with us. So this GPT app, I think you got to really show all of us one day. But I really believe that it will help unlock conversations between fathers and the children, and that helps us to go one level up to ask about things beyond just exams, and even asking things about emotions. We know the tips and the tricks on how to better ask it such that children will respond. Thank you, Jimmy, for sharing your parenting insights, your tips, and your wisdom to our listeners that are tuning in. Time has really caught up with us. So before we let Jimmy off, I know he has already shared a lot of wisdom with us, but I would like to let Jimmy have our last few words, to give encouragement to our parent listeners who are tuning in.
I think I just want to say to all fathers out there, being a father is not easy. There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of part of you have to grow. There are sides of you that you see that you may not like. But I think one thing you have to be quite clear that you're not alone. There are multiple fathers out there trying to do as well for their children. And I think in our generation, I'm a millennial generation fella, so I think in our generation, we are becoming more involved father than ever in the previous generation. So we're not alone. There are a lot of community of fathers out there. There are a lot of resources available. So I really encourage the fathers to just reach out and help each other. I think broadly, that's what men should come together as fathers to do more. Talk about it and talk about how do we raise our children for the future.
Yes, indeed. Reach out. Talk to people, talk to fellow dads, and be willing to ask for help. I think there's no shame in that as well. And really, like what Jimmy has mentioned to us today in our ParentNet podcast, a father's role in a child's life is really irreplaceable. Our presence in our children's life shapes their security, identity, confidence, and purpose for the rest of their lives. So treasure every moment of fatherhood, every day, whether your child is in baby phase, toddler phase, primary, secondary, or young adults. Treasure them every day in all its joys and its challenges as well. Thank you so much, Jimmy. It's been really my privilege to hear from you, having this podcast with you. I hope that our listeners who are tuning in has picked up many practical tips and have learned to honor our parents, especially acknowledging a father's role that is irreplaceable in a child's life. If you are looking for parenting resources, do visit our website at family.org.sg. I'm sure you have also benefited from this episode of our ParentNet podcast, so do feel free to share it with a friend or parent whom you feel might benefit from this. We hope you will keep tuning in to the ParentNet podcast to learn and grow in your parenting journey. Until next time, have a great week ahead with your family.